All right, my love. Hello, hello. We've got some problems that we are going to work through. We have 6 different problems, and in order to do the problems, we are going to need to use these special right triangles. I know that they are labeled with different variables than the ones that we did earlier today, but we're just going to go ahead and use these because I found this picture on Google, so it's okay that they have different variables. All right, so this one over here on the left, this is called a 30, 60, 90 because you guessed it, the angles are 30 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. And in a 30, 60, 90, you always label the sides like this, like they have them here. So the hypotenuse, you always label with a variable. In this problem, they're using an h. You can choose whatever variable you want to, it doesn't matter. But the hypotenuse is always labeled with a variable. The shortest side, the one that is in between the 90-degree angle and the 60-degree angle, this is the shortest side. It's always labeled with 1/2 and then times whatever the variable is. So in this case, 1/2 times h. And then this side over here, this is the medium side. It's in between the 30-degree angle and the 90-degree angle. It's going to be labeled with the square root of 3 over 2 times whatever the variable is. So this entire triangle is something that you kind of have to memorize. You have to memorize how to draw it, and you have to memorize how to label it. Same thing with this other triangle over here. This is a different special right triangle. This is called a 45, 45, 90. And when you label this one, both of the sides, these are the legs of the triangle, these both get labeled with a variable. In this case, they chose a k. And then the hypotenuse is always going to be labeled with the square root of 2 times k. So this is also another triangle for you to memorize. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the problems that you sent over, and depending on what the problem looks like, we're either going to choose this triangle over here, or we're going to choose this triangle over here to use. All right, so in this first problem, I'm noticing that this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. So because this one here is a 45, 45, 90, we're going to use the 45, 45, 90 that we just took a look at. All right, so I'm noticing that they're using a different variable than us, but it does not matter that we have a k and they have an x. It doesn't really matter. It's going to end up being the same thing anyway. So in this problem that you were given by your teacher, there's only one piece of information here, and that is the 3. So this 3 over here is on the hypotenuse. So here's what we're going to do to solve this problem. We're going to write down 3 equals, and then the 3 is going to equal the square root of 2 times, and it doesn't matter, you can use an x, a k, whatever variable you want to. So the reason that we're writing that down is because these pictures are matching here. And so since your teacher gave you information that the hypotenuse is 3, that 3 is going to equal this side over here. Remember, this is the triangle that like you're memorizing all of the different pieces of how to label it. So the 3 is going to equal square root of 2 times a variable. Once you set up this equation over here, now we have a number, an equal sign, a number, and a variable. So we're solving for the variable. We want to find out what x is equal to. Right now, the x is being multiplied to the square root of 2, so we have to divide both sides by the square root of 2. So now we have 3 over the square root of 2 equals x, because these ones will cancel out here. Now we would be done, but for some reason, math people are really picky and they don't like a square root to be on the bottom of a fraction. So they don't let us leave our final answer like this. They make us simplify the fraction. Here's how to simplify it. In order to get rid of the square root on the bottom, you have to multiply the entire fraction times the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. When you do that, on the top, you're going to have 3 times the square root of 2. Okay, let me try to write that here. All right, so on the top, 3 times the square root of 2. And on the bottom, we have the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, which is going to equal the square root of 4, because you can multiply those 2's together. The square root of 4 is equal to 2, because 2 times 2 is 4. So this is going to be simplified to be 3 times the square root of 2 over 2. That's going to equal x, that's going to equal our variable, and that's going to be our final answer. So our final answer here is going to be 3 times the square root of 2 over 2. That's the final answer for this problem. All right. Okay, for this one here, I'm noticing that our triangle is a 30, 60, 90. So we're going to have to find the other triangle, and we're going to have to use that in this problem. All right, here it is. Here's the other triangle. I know that it's drawn like a different way, so you're gonna have to really pay attention to the way that it's labeled, and like this side, you're gonna have to think about it as being in between the 30-degree angle and the 90-degree angle, because otherwise it gets confusing since it's like rotated. So in this problem that your teacher gave you, he gave you one piece of information, which is square root of 8. So the first thing is you have to figure out which side the square root of 8 is on when it comes to like this triangle over here in the way that we drew it. So the square root of 8 is on the hypotenuse here, which is in between the 60 and the 30. So on this triangle, the hypotenuse is right here in between the 30 and the 60. So in this triangle, the hypotenuse is the variable, and in this triangle, the hypotenuse is the square root of 8. So the square root of 8 is equal to the variable. They're on the same side of the triangle, so they are equal. So in this problem, we're going to say that h is equal to the square root of 8. Or you could have said any other variable is equal to the square root of 8. All right, now the problem wants us to find the side x. And so the side x is right here. So now we have to figure out, well, which one of these is side x? The x is in between the 60 degrees and the 90 degrees. And in this triangle, in between the 60 degrees and the 90 degrees is the 1/2 h. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this piece of information and I'm going to put this information into this triangle so that I can use it to find this side here. So if h is equal to the square root of 8, over here I'm going to say this side is actually equal to the square root of 8. So I'm going to now relabel this side down here. Instead of calling it 1/2 h, what could I call it instead? I don't want to use an h anymore because now I know what h is equal to. Since h is equal to the square root of 8, now I can rewrite it as 1/2 times the square root of 8. That's basically our answer, but now we just have to simplify it. So 1/2 times the square root of 8. If you multiply fractions, you would have to put this like over 1. Then you multiply the numerators together, and you multiply the denominators together, and that's your final answer. It's almost your final answer. The only thing is now you have to simplify it. So to simplify it, you're not allowed to have a square root sign on the bottom, but we don't, so we don't have to worry about that. But we do have to simplify this square root here. A square root is only in simplest form if there are no hidden squares on the inside of it. That means that there are no squares that you could like kind of pull out to the outside. Since 8 is equal to 4 times 2, we could actually rewrite this as the square root of 4 times 2 over 2, because that's the same thing as 8. 4 is a square because 2 times 2 is 4. So now we're going to take this 4 and we're actually going to pull it on the outside of the square root symbol. We're going to take the square root of 4, which is equal to 2. And so now we're going to put the 2 on the outside, and we still have a 2 left over on the inside because it was being multiplied by 2. And then we still have a 2 on the bottom. All right, we're almost done. The last step is, now that I have a 2 on the outside here and I have a 2 on the bottom, these ones can cancel. So 2 divided by 2, that's just going to equal 1. And now my final answer is the square root of 2 over 1, which is just the square root of 2. So our final answer for this problem, for this side length, is that it equals the square root of 2. Alrighty, here we have another 30, 60, 90, so we're going to use that same triangle again. All right, so here it is. Here's that other triangle. Now they gave us a piece of information right here. They gave us a 4. The 4 is on this side. This side is in between the 30 and the 90 degree. On this triangle, in between the 30 and the 90 degree, we have this whole thing here. So this is equal to this. We're going to write that down. We're going to say 4 is equal to square root of 3 over 2 times the variable. All right. Now, if you take a look at what they're asking us to find, it says find the length of side x. This is side x right here. This is the hypotenuse in between the 30 and the 60. On this triangle, the hypotenuse in between the 30 and the 60 is labeled with our h. If we solve this equation and we find out what h is equal to, because h is equal to x, that's going to be our final answer. So what we need to do is we need to solve this equation for h, and once we find out what that equals, that's going to be our final answer. To solve it for h, the h is being multiplied to this fraction, so we need to divide both sides by square root of 3 over 2. So we're going to divide by square root of 3 over 2, divide by square root of 3 over 2. So h is going to equal, or x is going to equal, 4 divided by the square root of 3 over 2. Now we have to figure out how to do the division. When you divide with fractions, Okay, I'll leave it here. When you divide with fractions, you keep change flips. So we are going to keep the 4 the same. I'm going to just continue the problem up here. So we're going to keep the 4 the same. It's going to be 4 over 1. We're going to change the divide to times, and we're going to flip the next fraction. So instead of square root of 3 over 2, it's going to be 2 over the square root of 3. So that's how to divide with fractions. You keep change flip. All right, then I'm going to multiply top times top. That's going to equal 8. And bottom times bottom, that's going to equal the square root of 3. Now, we would be done if mathematicians weren't so picky, but we're not allowed to leave this answer like this because it has a square root on the bottom, which is apparently illegal in math. So to get rid of that square root on the bottom, we have to multiply square root of 3 on the top and square root of 3 on the bottom. Oh dear. Okay, so on the top, it's going to be 8 times the square root of 3. So I'm just going to write 8 times the square root of 3. And on the bottom, square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9. And we know that the square root of 9 is equal to 3, since 3 times 3 is 9. And since I can't simplify this any further because the 8 and the 3, like 3 doesn't go into 8 at all, that's going to be our final answer. So the length of the hypotenuse is 8 times the square root of 3 over 3. All right, we are all done with the special right triangles. Now we're just going to be simplifying radical expressions. This one says, what's the product of 4 times the square root of 21 and 7 times the square root of 6 in simplest radical form? So when we're multiplying these together, we multiply the numbers that are on the outside together, and we multiply the numbers that are on the inside together, but don't actually multiply the numbers inside together. Wait just a second. So this is what it's going to look like to begin with. On the outside, we're going to do 4 times 7. And on the inside of the square root, we're going to do 21 times 6. So that's what happens when you multiply. It says, what's the product? That means you're multiplying 4 times 7. And then square root of 21 times square root of 6. Now, on the outside, you can just multiply that together. That's going to be 28. But on the inside, the reason that we are not going to multiply these numbers together yet is because we are needing to simplify this by trying to find hidden squares that are on the inside. Here's what that means, like when you have a hidden square. If you have something like the square root of 18, that's actually going to be equal to the square root of 9 times 2, because 9 times 2 is 18. And 9 is a hidden square because 3 times 3 is 9. So we can actually like pull out the 9 and move it to the outside. And when we move it to the outside, we're taking the square root of it. So it's going to become a 3. And then the square root of 2 is the leftover part. So that's what we mean when we say we're looking for hidden squares that are on the inside of the radical. So in order to find the hidden squares here, I'm actually not going to multiply 21 times 6. I'm actually going to rewrite it as what times what can equal these numbers. So 21 is equal to 7 times 3. So I'm going to rewrite 21 as 7 times 3. And then 6 is equal to 3 times 2. So I'm going to rewrite it as 3 times 2. Now, the reason I did that is because, look, we have a 3 and a 3 here. Well, 3 times 3 is 9. And so I can pull this out to the outside here. I can take the square root of 9, which is equal to 3. So when I pull it out, it actually becomes a 3. So on the outside, I already had my 28 to begin with. Now I also have a times 3 on the outside. And then on the inside, I have a 7 and a 2. There's no hidden squares there that I can pull out. So now I'm able to just combine it together on the inside. So we have, oh, I wish I could like scroll up here. Oh, yeah, I can. Okay. We have on the outside, we have a 3 times 28, which is equal to 24 plus 60 is 84. And then on the inside, we have 7 times 2, which is 14. So that's going to be our final answer here. All right, so here we're trying to find some hidden squares and we want to pull those to the outside. I know that 75 can be rewritten as 25 times 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is just rewrite this problem as the square root of 25 times 3 over 10. Now, the reason I did that is because 25 has a square root. 25 is 5 times 5. So I'm going to pull the 25 to the outside to take the square root of it. And since the square root of 25 is 5, that's going to become a 5 on the outside. And then we have a 3 left over on the inside. And then we still have our 10 on the bottom. Now the 5 and the 10, we can simplify this a little bit. So we can divide these by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. And so for my final answer, we will get square root of 3 over 2. So that's going to be the final simplified radical for the square root of 75 over 10. All right, and this last one here, this is multiplication. So we're multiplying the square root of 8 times the square root of 56. Anytime you're multiplying things together, because they're both inside the square root, you can just rewrite it as the square root of 8 times 56 to start with. And now we need to identify any hidden squares on the inside. Automatically, I know that 8 has a hidden square because I know that 8 is 4 times 2. So I'm going to just rewrite the 8 as 4 times 2. The 56 we still need to do, but I'm going to save that for the next step because that's a bigger number. So I'm going to worry about that later. So the 8 I did, 4 times 2. Now 4 is 2 times 2. So I'm going to pull that to the outside and make that a 2. And then on the inside, I have a 2 left over times 56. Okay, now we need to worry about 56. What hidden squares are there in 56? Let's see. A hidden square is either going to be a 4 times something or 9 times something because 3 times 3 is 9. Or maybe it'll be 16 or 25 or something like that. I'm also noticing that I actually do still have a 2 right here next to the 56. So if I break the 56 into 2 times something, then that will actually give me another hidden square here that I can pull to the outside. So 56 I know is going to be equal to 2 times 28. So I'm going to rewrite this as, instead of 56, I'm going to rewrite it as 2 times 28. All right, so now I have a 2 and a 2 on the inside. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 has a square root, so we can pull it to the outside. So we're going to take both of these 2's together. And because 2 times 2 is 4, we're really pulling out a 4 here. And when we pull out the 4, we are going to take the square root of it, which is 2, and we're going to write that on the outside. We also already had a 2 on the outside to begin with, so I'm going to make sure to leave that there. And we have a 28 left over. So now we have a 4 altogether on the outside and a 28 on the inside. All right, I'm going to double check 28, see if there's any more hidden squares that I need to pull out. Let's see. Is 28 equal to 4 times something? Yeah, 4 times 7 is equal to 28. So now I'm going to rewrite this as 4 times 7. And now 4 is a square, so I can pull that to the outside and take the square root of it. So I already had a 4 to begin with on the outside. And now I have a 2 as well, because I'm taking the square root of 4. So 2 times 4 on the outside, and a 7 left over on the inside. On the outside, 2 times 4 is 8. So 8, oops, where did my, okay, so 8 times the square root of 7 is going to be our final answer here. Congratulations on being done! Woo! Go Kayla, you're awesome, you're awesome.